Okay, well, this is Dr. Alessandra Wall of Life in Focus, and I have the privilege today of meeting with Daryl Edwards and Jerry Dillon, founders of Health Unplugged. How are you guys doing?
Good, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah,
really
very
good.
good, thank you.
So I asked Jerry and Daryl to speak with me. It is Sunday, and thank you very much for taking out of your weekend to do this. Because Health Unplugged is coming up. It's at the end of the month of October, October 31st and November 1st, 2015, to be specific. And it's out in London, and it's a huge event. And I know that running even a small event is a labor of madness. I wanted to call it a labor of love, but a labor of madness. And so I wanted to talk with these two gentlemen about what it takes to pull off something like this. And I also wanted to talk with both of them about the masochism that goes into following your passions. You ready for this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So I was at Health Unplugged last year. It was a fantastic event. There were a number of speakers on all kinds of topics, everything from paleo to health to grief. I went and talked about stress. We talked about mental health and psychology. I also know that at the end of Health Unplugged last year, both of you were talking about the amount of work that went into creating this project and how neither of you were sure that you wanted to do it again. So what made you change your minds?
Well, when we were there at that event, I remember that quite clearly. I was quite enthused at the end of the day, meeting with you guys and having some downtime. And I did turn around to Daryl and said, "Oh, what do you think? I can't believe we managed to pull this off." And he was just like, "No, there's no chance. He's not going to do this." Um, I was hoping in the back of my mind, that he would come round, and eventually did. If he wasn't on board, I don't think it would have been a one-man show. So I think the passion was always there to kind of do something. And it felt, I think, years gone by, you kind of tend to forget a little bit of the pains as well, and we thought we were going to build on some of the lessons learned in that respect as well. So, well, I'm glad that it happened, and Daryl changed his mind. I'm sure he's got his own version of events.
Yes, Daryl. What? Because you were. I remember the day before to pull off, and it was a seamless event, right? You had not slept. Neither of you had slept the night before it started, um, and you couldn't tell. You were bushy-eyed or bushy-tailed and bright-eyed, and you were on point. But I do remember you're like, no, and all of us were hoping that you would do it again. The speakers, I remember having a panel on mental health, and at the end of that panel, some of the guests saying, next year, can you guys talk about women in mental health? Could you do a panel on women? And it'd be like, yes, at Health Unplugged 2015, if you can convince Daryl to do it, we can talk about all these things. So what changed your mind?
Um, yeah, I'm still not quite sure, to be honest. It's the few weeks prior, it was just a nightmare. The amount of stress, the amount of work that had to be done to get it off the ground. And as it was a first event and the first time, a lot of it was literally just let's do whatever it takes to get it off the ground. And so when it actually came round to the day itself, it was purely the feedback that we got based on the day, how it was executed very successfully, and there was a passion to do it again. But at that point, I was like, nah, enough's enough. It's not gonna happen. And I think because there was just so much feedback, and there was definitely a need for the community to be, to feel as if we're supporting the community here in the UK and in Europe around paleo. I mean, it had to happen again. So probably ask me on the 1st of November what my thoughts are in terms of Health Unplugged 2016. But at the moment, we're just focused on delivering the best event that we can on those 2 days, and hopefully we're giving a platform for speakers and education for attendees that will support a requirement for an event next year.
So we are just a few weeks away from the event, about 4.5, 5 weeks at this point. what does it take to create and pull off an event like this?
Insanity, probably.
Yeah.
I would say. So you know, neither of us have a background in event management or event planning. So and something, especially something of this scale. So it really is a burning desire to have some representation for paleo in Europe. We're well aware of what's happening in the US and the events that happen there, and in other parts of the world as well. In Australia, in South Africa, there are events happening on a regular basis, and I felt as though Europe was underrepresented in that regard. So there's a need for this, there's a desire for this, there's a want for an event of this nature, and it was a case of let's step in and make it happen. Whether that was the right decision to make is another question, but in terms of our passion and our belief in this, it definitely is the right decision to ensure that something like this happens on a regular basis.
Jerry,
Yeah.
how about you? What do you think? What does it take to?
Well, I mean, just on Darrell's point, really. There's a bit of frustration in the respect that we're trying to kind of build a community here. We're trying to get people involved, and sometimes getting them together is the crux of what we're trying to do here. And the event is just a platform for that to happen. So we're doing our very utmost to kind of alert everyone and let everyone know that this is happening, because through some conversations that I've had, some people weren't aware of last year's event, and so they're coming to this year's event. So I'm sure there's many other people out there as well, and it's a bit frustrating from the point of view that in the US and Australia, it's had more traction, and we want to do the same thing here in the UK, because we're passionate about health, and this is a message that we want to kind of relay to as many people as possible.
So I'm curious, now that you mentioned that, why do you think that is? Why is it that the traction is greater, not just in the US, but you're right? Australia's got a huge paleo movement. New Zealand is starting. What's potentially holding Europe back from being in the same place with this?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, I feel some of the over-regulation, as our cousins in the US would see it, in Europe means we don't see the same dangers as a consumer in the US, say, in relation to food. So our baseline for food and food purchases and regulation is pretty high. So for example, we don't have growth hormone is not applicable within the EU. Genetically modified foods pretty much non-existent throughout Europe. So it's in some respects it's a lot more difficult to sell this message of big food, and the government are only interested in food when it comes to other people making lots of money from this, and regulation doesn't really do much in terms of the consumer protection. And it's a much harder sell selling paleo and selling personal responsibility when it comes to healthcare. We have a very good welfare state here. We have the NHS. So in some respects, selling the argument that you have to do whatever you can to take individual responsibility for your health, it's like, well, hold on a second, we do have a safety net here. We do have, we can buy good quality food relatively inexpensively here. So that's my personal opinion as to why paleo in itself is a difficult sell, and why the Brits are very cynical, in my opinion. And so most of the attention tends to veer towards what's happening in the US, because in the US it's a completely different playing field, and so there's a lot more passion and fervor for making change happen, because that is going to be the best way to see a brighter future in terms of the health status of the US. But that isn't necessarily a fixture here. So yeah, that's my opinion, and it seems that's probably several years of observation, and many people not wanting to have paleo as their label, as their banner. You know, people aren't proud of saying that they follow a paleo lifestyle here. They don't want to be labeled with that banner. Whereas in the US, people are very proud to say, "This is what I believe in. I'm going to fight for this until the death." So yeah, I think there are several reasons, but this is why we're hosting Health Unplugged, because we want people to have a debate around this and to see what we can do to further the state of the nation here in the UK and elsewhere within Europe.
Well, speaking of which, I mean, Health Unplugged isn't just about paleo. I think that's one of the things. I was going to bring this up later, but I find really interesting. Just reading the speaker list this year compared to last year, reading the topics. Yes, paleo is there, but you really are talking about health on a much broader spectrum this year. So we're talking. CJ Swaby is going to come in and talk about polyamory, right? I'm coming in and I'm talking about a number of things, and yes, I'm talking about health in terms of putting your brain in standby mode and kind of reacquiring the art of doing nothing, literally doing nothing, and how important that is for our brains. But I'm also talking about the value and the importance of living intentionally. This event is going to cover far more than just what it means to eat paleo or be paleo. What are some of the big highlights that you're seeing coming up in 2015 that you're excited about?
Jerry, do you want to respond to that? I mean,
yeah. I mean, this year, I mean, last year was great. I mean, you're absolutely right. There was a broad number of topics, and this year I'm even more enthused. We've got 2 days worth of events, and so we've got, for example, Dal talked about regulation here. We've got Dr. Chatterjee talking about the role of NHS and how we can try to fit this in, this sort of lifestyle. So challenging some of the societal norms. We've got some things on sustainable paleo, which is questions I've had for quite a while as well. We've got a panel which yourself, Alessandro, is on, and including myself, about thriving parenthood. So there is a whole diverse range there this year. And I almost wanted to kind of pull myself off certain things so I could go and attend other people's lectures as well. So, you know, I'm really enthused. I'm really excited about this. And it is not just paleo. You're absolutely right. It is about health in a broader perspective, which is applicable to people of all levels of knowledge and walks of life. Yeah, I mean, I would say check the schedule out, really. I mean, there's just so much there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, there's a reason why it wasn't called Paleo Unplugged. It's because we wanted people to focus first and foremost on health. But at the same time, I mean, I personally believe in paleo as a gateway to other aspects of lifestyle that are very important. So it isn't just about food. It isn't just about, you know, fitness or exercise. There are many other aspects of this lifestyle that we require in order to maintain and to improve our health. So I think even though the primary focus is health, but probably the underpinning for definitely for most of us is this ancestral viewpoint, is kind of looking back to look forward. It's seeing what we can take best of the past and you know interact with the best of the present and seeing what the future is going to hold for us. So paleo, there isn't a big push to push the kind of paleo agenda, whatever that is or may be, but at the same time, most of what's happening in the 21st century in terms of our life, in terms of lifestyle, it's what's causing us pain today. So we can't, you know, we have to hold fast to some truth in relation to our ancestral past in order to become healthier. I feel it's impossible to divorce the two, in my opinion, for us to see a sea change in better health.
I agree, and I've been following a paleo lifestyle / diet for nearly 7 years at this point, so I'm completely immersed in it. But I think Health Unplugged is very much representing a shift we're seeing in the paleo movement, at least here in the States, where originally what we were talking about was simply food. And then we started talking about food and exercise. And now we're talking about really living intentionally, right? So being very intentional in terms of thinking about what you put in your body, how you move your body. And now, again, with some of these topics we discuss, right? The thriving parent, or even sustainability issues, or figuring out what's right for you. What we're going to is being much more intentional in terms of your politics, in terms of your love life, in terms of parenthood, in terms of the choices you make as an individual. And all of that really is being kind of pushed by this paleo movement. And it's a very nice shift to see, and it's very nice to see in this year's event.
Yeah, for sure. Totally agree. And yeah, I think it's unfortunate that if you look elsewhere within the movement, that the popularity tends to be focused on, say, cookbooks. That tends to be, that's people's focus. It's like cooking, food. That's what paleo is. The reality is, as we know, you've got to look at all a holistic view and a holistic interpretation of health, which includes many other factors, as you mentioned, relationships. It's going outside, it's interacting with nature, it's interacting with real people. It's making sure you're getting some sunshine and vitamin D. So yeah, it's a platform to ensure that we can have a debate and discussion and share information around all of the aspects of life that lead to better health. And I think for most of us, we all have a different entry point into this lifestyle. And the gateway for me was definitely the food, and very quickly followed by my focus on a different type of movement. But for many of us, it is an opportunity to plug in the gaps wherever they may be. And that's one of the reasons why you yourself, Alessandra, is invited to make sure we're plugging the gaps in areas that you're the most knowledgeable about and a subject matter expert on.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So you mentioned the word relationship. I'm going to bring this back. It's so easy. I could talk about the event itself, and I do want to more, but I want to talk about the process going into this. I was telling Jerry before speaking that the next Life in Focus podcast is going to feature Chard and Caroline from We Love Paleo. And one of the questions I asked them was, working on a project like this, given that you're married, how has it impacted your marriage? You two have been friends for a very long time, and your friendship predates Health Unplugged. So how does working on something like this, an event this big, how has it changed or impacted your relationship? You have a psychologist here. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll start. I mean, it's in a way, even before the event came about, I feel our lives have tracked a similar life course, and that has kind of almost made us with a similar viewpoint, basically, to kind of pursue this and move forward. So it kind of eradicates some of the issues that we kind of come along. And most of the time, it's normally about Daryl asking me to do things, and I haven't done it quite correctly. And because there's an honesty there, it's easy to accept that from my viewpoint, anyway. And it's easier to kind of challenge each other because I think the net goal, we have the vision, and it's about delivering that. And it's not something that I personally take personally that he's having a grab at me. It's all about getting the job done. So I'm willing to listen to criticisms. I'm not perfect. I appreciate that. I make loads of typos, and I have to pick that up. And I'm thinking, oh, how did I do that? So. It is stressful, and it can be challenging, but we're there to kind of watch over each other's backs. That's the way I kind of see it.
Daryl?
No comment. No, I'm only joking. So yeah, I'm sitting on my couch now, so being analysed by yourself, Alessandra. But in fairness, I suppose it goes both ways. It's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I think by being involved in an event like this, we get to know each other even more in terms of, because we're kind of now working together, which isn't the norm. It's a different aspect of our relationship where we're actually working together. So, you know, we're now likely to see more of a clash in terms of our personalities because of our work ethic and stuff. And I know I can be a bit of a control freak sometimes, and so I'm learning a lot about myself. I learn a lot about the dynamics between Jerry and I, and other parties that are involved in this event as well. So it's a learning experience, but I think it's definitely a positive one, because we're constantly seeking improvement. It is about personal development. It is about building the community. And so, you know, any conflict is easily resolvable, because we're trying to reach this bigger goal of delivering an event that we're going to be happy with, and that the experience for those attending is going to be fantastic, and for everyone involved, it's going to be a platform for them to do even more to improve the health of themselves and others. So yeah, as I remember, you probably witnessed some of the conversations that Jerry and I had last year, especially prior to the event. But it was all part of us making sure the day was successful. So that's the way I see it.
I think, you know, one of the big projects like this, it's a little bit like having children. So both of you have children. And before you have children, everybody tells you what it's going to be like, what's going to be wonderful, how hard it's going to be, and you think you get it. You're like, yeah, I know having children's really difficult. It takes a lot of time. I'm going to have to make a lot of sacrifices. I'm going to have to give up things I want and desire, including sleep. And then you have children, and you understand why everybody who had kids said, you don't know until you know. And big projects like this are very much like that. And I'm not surprised entirely that Daryl was interested, because you talk to so many women after going through pregnancy and delivering a child are like, I'm never doing this again. And with time, the memory of everything that was unpleasant about it remains as a fact, but the true recollection of it kind of fades. And you're left with the parts that were really good. And so there's that impact. I think, you know, Health Unplugged, doing a documentary, any of those things has that kind of same impact, where at the end of the day, it's more of a nightmare than you ever imagined. Hopefully, like having children in some way, more rewarding than you could have ever imagined. What do you both think about that?
Yeah, I mean, so sorry, your earlier question kind of alluded to this, you know, like why we did Health Unplugged again this year, and I think it's kind of, you know,
Jerry, you're cutting up. Jerry's cutting up here.
Having another child.
Jerry?
If Jerry's cutting up, you want to answer the question while we wait to get Jerry back?
Yes. So, yeah, like having children. So, you know, I suppose the analogy between birth and birthing, obviously being a guy, this is purely observation, but there is the pain and the suffering and the sacrifice of going through everything that you have to go through in terms of delivering, and then the sacrifices you have to make in order to put your children first. But as time goes on, all you remember are the rewarding aspects of that relationship. And so it's very similar to a project of this nature. What we're focusing on is the bigger picture, and you know, the feedback that we got at the end of Health Unplugged, and the photo session right at the end, and people having a great experience. That was enough to eradicate pretty much all of the pain and the stress and the suffering that we'd encountered for the months, you know, leading up to the event. So So yeah, it was definitely painful. It was definitely not something you'd want to repeat. Repeat the experience. But there was more than enough for us to go. You know what? It's worth doing this again, and it's worth us taking lessons from what we learned and applying them to this year and hopefully making an easier experience second time around. And I'm sure for most parents, second time around is easier than the first. So yeah, very similar experience, I would say.
Jerry, you're back. You want to pick back up at answering that question? Because we missed everything you said. Oh, we have two Jerry.
I think he's still.
Sorry, I think they're setting up a printer, so I think that's my.
Yeah, you still.
That's the problem with doing a semi-live event online across a continent and an ocean. It just happens. We'll get Jerry back.
We'll get Jerry back. So yeah, what's the next question? Let's just, because as it is live, let's just go.
You guys hear me?
Yeah, Jerry. Yeah, Jerry, you're cutting out. So I'd sort out the printer problem and then come back online.
I love it.
All right. Okay.
So
hold on. I'll be back in 1 sec.
Okay, sir. You know, I don't think I ever told you this, but I got my first celebrity moment thanks to Health Unplugged, because I was shopping in my local Whole Food store, and this summer, at the beginning of the summer, and I have this young woman who comes up to me and goes, "Alessandra," and I look at her and I have no idea who she is, and she had attended Health Unplugged. She was in San Diego for business. And she recognized me. She came to the talk, and it was this great celebrity moment. I'm like, not only do you recognize me, remember my name out of the blue, which is very nice, for having seen me only once at a single event, but I get recognized across again an ocean and a continent in my own home. So that was a nice moment.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's it was a privilege to have met you, and so fortunate to have you on board with the event last year and this too. So you add so much, you bring so much value to the conference, and with your experience, life experience and professional experience. So I think that's great for you to get that, again, getting that feedback and that celebrity moment momentarily is what it's all about, because it's not about the celebrity status. It's about the fact that you made enough of an impact on someone for them to remember you and your name and what you did, and 8,000, 9,000 miles away.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's the part. And I feel very privileged to have been allowed to take part in last year's event and to be able to come back this year. But we have Jerry back with us. So Jerry, parenthood, projects and the pain of what is versus what we remember. What were your thoughts going to be?
Yeah. So yeah, I was saying you asked earlier on about last year's event and this year's, and it is that analogy is very true. I think that you remember the highs, you kind of forget the lows in a way, because at certain points, while we've been getting this year's event underway, I've been scratching my head thinking, like, I don't know how we managed to do all that sort of stuff last year, and this year, it just seems, in a way, yeah, I kind of forgot some of those aspects and how busy we really were. But you just kind of get on with it, and once you're in it, once you have the baby, you don't have time to kind of procrastinate and think about, oh, actually, what was your life like before you had the baby? You have the baby, and life is, and you kind of move on, and you try to do the best job you can. So it's it's I don't think we've got the luxury of thought in that respect. In terms of participating in the event now and making it happen. But at the end of it, I mean, the things I remember is like I said, having that dinner with you guys, and saying, oh, hopefully your experiences were really good, and everyone said, oh yeah, it was seamless, but behind the scenes, the amount of adrenaline that was running through us, it was kind of crazy, and I'm feeling it now because you're asking, but I mean, it's not something I was thinking about, even a few minutes ago. So it's good. It's part of. I think it's part of making this happen is the enthusiasm that have for this sort of thing to actually take off, and it is a love. It is your little baby in that respect.
I think I personally believe that's so important to know, and people who aren't necessarily running businesses for themselves or getting into big projects like this might not realize that a lot of us who are doing these things are driven by two primary motivations. At least I am, and everybody I've spoken to who's an entrepreneur or working for themselves will say the same thing. One is about doing something you love and having this opportunity through any avenue. In this case, it's professionally to just live out your passions. And the other one is to create value for other people. Right, and yes, of course, like from a business perspective, you want to be able to monetize that value and make a living from it. But when I think it's important for people to realize that as you're running this, that those two things come into play. That it's not just about, hey, let's do another paleo event, because there's no paleo event here in Europe really being run. It's let's do a paleo event and let's do a health-based event because we realize how important this is, and we realize the value that is intrinsic to this lifestyle and to the philosophies that come out of this lifestyle, and we want to share that with other people. So we get to do what we love, and we get to bring value into the life of other people. So I know we've kind of talked about this. If you feel like it's redundant, you certainly don't feel like you have to answer the question, but if we're speaking about the value you're bringing to your guests, what is it?
The value. It's meeting with like-minded people of many different persuasions, an opportunity to ask. You may be meeting an author of a book that you've written. You have the opportunity to ask them, an individualized question rather than what they can read generically in your book. You may get to meet a presenter who you've seen online. You may see a presentation of theirs online. You have the opportunity to have an open Q&A with that individual. You'll have the opportunity to buy products from paleo-friendly, natural health-friendly vendors. So that I think there's lots of opportunities for you to take it one step further in terms of your relationship with a healthier lifestyle. So, you'll be able to ask people questions in relation to not just the successes but the challenges. So oftentimes, if you think about the online journey or the online promotion of most people in this industry, they're talking about how successful everything is, how amazing their journey has been, where they started from and where they are today, and everything's just been a smooth, steady climb. Whereas the reality is, even once we've found something which is so enriching and rewarding, we do have our challenges, and this platform gives us the opportunity, whether that's as a presenter or as a participant, to discuss that openly, hopefully without judgment. And that's why I believe this forum is extremely important. That you're not just on your own in front of your Facebook screen, living your lifestyle on that basis completely virtually, and just following an instruction manual in a book. It's like there's far more to this than that, and I think a commune, a community, and building a community and fostering that community is extremely important, because we need that for survival. So this is what we need to enrich ourselves. So yeah, that's the reason why we're doing this. That's the value that we're adding, that you can't get in any other medium. This is the only way you can get this type of value.
Jerry, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just building on those points, really. I mean, the whole paleo lifestyle, if you think about it, has been a cultural reference point and we have lost some of those cultural references, from like tribal customs, for example. And in a way, this is building our tribe, and to have some sort of discourse going forwards. And it's about building those individual relationships, be at whatever level, between authors, bloggers, delegates. Everyone's there to do the same thing and to share their experiences and their journeys, their trials, their tribulations. And this event, in a sense, is a tribal gathering as such. So I think that's where the kind of holistically I feel the value of this event is. And yeah, I mean, the more people that you do meet and you do talk to, you find that there's so much they want to share with you, and they want to talk to, because it can't feel that we are so isolated, and the challenges are so stacked up on the other side in society that when we have an opportunity to share something like this, it's a joyous occasion, really, to kind of finally meet someone that you can share with without having any kind of prejudices, and you can be very, very frank about your issues, your concerns. I mean, one of my reasons for kind of following this lifestyle is to be a role model for my children, and to kind of pursue this as as it feels logically and reasonably and emotionally to kind of sustain this. So and I'm sure it's very similar for many other people as well.
So both of you bring up something very interesting that I've thought about in other contexts, but I haven't thought about this. So for anybody who might choose to watch this, who's questioning whether or not it's worth it, worth the money, worth the time, worth going, the reason I would say yes is not because I'm a speaker at the event, but if I look at the course of my life over the last 2 years, which has been getting involved, going to more events, first as a guest and then eventually as a speaker, what I know I've gotten out of it is exactly what you're talking about, which is there's this community, and now this international community that's grown. I have developed friendships with people I've met at these conferences that stand the test of time. So I can think of one person I met going to one of Mark Sisson, who's going to be a speaker at the event, one of Mark Sisson's Primal Cons in Mexico. That was March of 2014, Daryl?
Could well be. Yeah.
Right? And so I've seen her once since then. But if she lived across the street from me, we would spend all our time together. And I have these really deep friendships that have developed. I have, my relationship with you, Daryl, and I've met Jerry, and there is this tribe, there's this community that exists, and you're right, it isn't about simply reading a book or following some kind of group online, but you forge these connections with people who get why you're doing what you're doing, and some of them will educate you, and others you'll be able to educate and support, and it's amazing. It's amazing to be able to go back to events across the world and know that you're going to see somebody you recognize and somebody who you know and is part of. I love the word tribe, someone who's part of your tribe. And I think that's one of the really, really big values of attending an event like this, of attending a conference. It's not just the acquisition of knowledge, it's the acquisition of connections, and that mirroring, that recognition that you and I belong in some way. And it's a wonderful thing. So I know I've taken up nearly a full hour of your Sundays. Any last thoughts, anything either of you want to share? I will post this, and I will make sure there are links, but feel free to share links or any other information we haven't talked about that you think somebody watching this would like to know.
Yeah, so if you want to find out more about the event, it's the best place is healthunplugged.co.uk. It has information profiles of the speakers. It has an agenda which will discuss some of the, have descriptions of the workshops that are going to be held, and the panel discussions, as well as the presentations, and information about the venue, and hints and tips on finding accommodation, which in London is can be difficult at any time of year, but especially on this occasion, you know, it's Halloween and there's lots going on around that time. So you can find hints and tips of getting around, of places to stay, paleo-friendly options whilst you're in town. So there's lots of information there that you'll find valuable regardless whether you're going to attend the event or not. So healthunplugged.co.uk is the best place to go to find out a lot more about the event. And if you want to connect with us on social media, we have a Facebook group, Facebook page called Health Unplugged, facebook.com/healthunplugged. And that's really an opportunity for you to send us any questions that you may have about the event. So that's an open forum. You can ask us about any questions about the event. You can pose questions to the speakers to ensure that they have some, you know, advance warning of the type of issues and questions that you'd like to ask at the event, and they can maybe even tailor their presentations to take that into account. So it's a great opportunity to interact with the event and the organizers and those taking part.
Anything you want to add? There's also Twitter. You're at Unplugged Health, right, on Twitter?
Yes. On Twitter, it's at Unplugged Health. On Instagram, it's at Health Unplugged. There's also the Google Plus. There's a YouTube channel, Health Unplugged. So yeah, we're kind of covering as many social media bases as possible. But yeah, you can find all of those out from the main hub, which is healthunplugged.co.uk.
Jerry, anything you want to add that we haven't covered?
I think Daryl's pretty much covered it, really. And you know, we're just really enthused to build this tribe. You know, we want to see some new faces. Reach out to those people that are not yet aware of this. And now we've got the Rugby World Cup and, you know, going on as well. So you know, I'm sure, you know, there's plenty of people still out there.
If you're not from London, it's a great weekend to be in London.
Well, you know, thank you for making this time to record this.
Thank you, Jerry. It was my pleasure. Honestly, I get this is so awful to say, but it's true. I get the warm and fuzzies when I do things like this. It makes me slightly giddy. I don't know. It makes me giddy. Just talking about people doing stuff that they love and stuff I'm included in. And if I continue talking, I'm actually going to get teary-eyed. That's how giddy it makes me. So I will cut before I make more of a fool of myself.
Far too emotional.
I'm not far too emotional. I'm appropriately emotional.
So you are far too emotional. So we'll have less of that. We don't want to see any of that at Health Unplugged.
No, that was so un-British of me. It's a good thing. We're talking about to be inside. So for anybody wondering, Health Unplugged is in London, October 31st and November 1st of 2015. It's a great weekend to be in London if you want to see, you know, Halloween in London and how people react to the World Cup. Hopefully England will be in it. There is still room. I just got my Airbnb, you know, set up just a few days ago, and I'm within walking distance of the event. And you'll get to see all three of us and a lot of other fascinating people. So, thank you.